Today on A Word on Westerns, Ryan O'Neal.
I said, you know what? You have an Academy Award, don't you? For Stalag 17. He said, yeah, I do. Where do you keep your Academy Award? And there's a long pause, and he said, it's in the Bay of Naples. I said, the Bay of Naples? You took it and you threw it into the Bay of Naples? He said, yeah. He said, I was sorry about it. The next day we were all diving for it.
Welcome to A Word on Westerns, where we talk to the greatest Western creators of yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Hi, this is RJ Word, and you are listening to me and
Rob Word on A Word on Westerns, the podcast.
Well, Rob, who do we have today?
Just call me Dad or Pop, okay? I'm much happier that way, but it's okay. You're a professional. You can call me whatever you'd like.
Yeah,
son. So let's talk about today's guest, okay?
Okay.
Ryan O'Neal. I've always liked Ryan's performances on screen. I know he was kind of irascible. In fact, I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you were there when this happened, but we were in Malibu at our friends Freddie and Corinna Field's house. And Freddie had sold years ago one of his first houses on the beach in Malibu to Ryan, which is where Ryan lived. And so on the weekends, we'd go hang out down there, and Ryan and Farrah would come over Sunday afternoons to Freddie's, and Laura and I would go too, and then you would often be there as a youngster. And I remember one time, and Ryan was such a film buff, and he's on my left and Freddie's on my right, and we're talking, and Ryan knows his movies. Well, so do I. But Ryan would make a mistake and misremember something, and I would correct him.
Oh, that sounds dangerous.
Well, it was more dangerous than I thought. I liked him because he was sharp and smart, and he'd been a former boxer, for real. And it happened a couple of times, and Freddie leans over to me and he goes, Rob, don't tease him. And I go, I'm not teasing him. I'm helping him with his film history. And so I kind of toned it down a little bit, and Ryan and I were still having these exchanges, and he said something, and I nailed him again, and he punches me in my shoulder, and I go, whoa, that hurt. And he goes, do you box?
Yeah, that has so much to do with film history,
Well,
you know?
I don't know. I just said, not with you, pal. But there was this yin and yang sort of antagonistic thing, but his humor and my humor sort of matched each other, and we started enjoying each other's company and became friends after that.
Yeah, I remember he would just send you the most random boxing videos that you would just show me on your phone. And I guess he was trying to remind you who's boss.
No, well, I don't know. But he would also send like autographed lobby cards from Nickelodeon, for instance, or he sent this great one from the Wild Rovers, the Western that he did with William Holden, and he tells some terrific stories about that and about Holden, what happened to William Holden's Oscar, and what he told Ryan about his Academy Award nomination, which was for Love Story. And Ryan's background was amazing too. His father was a screenwriter, wrote some Westerns, and Ryan also appeared on the Dobie Gillis show with the lovely Tuesday Weld and Marlo Thomas. And
that's how he got his SAG card, right?
Yes. In fact, it's interesting he talks about that too. So it's not just Westerns today on A Word on Westerns, which is my passion, but it also includes talks about Peyton Place, his monster series, and working in feature films, and also Love Story and Ally McGraw. So I think people listening to this will learn more about Ryan, and when it's over, I've got a little something I want to share with everybody who's listening about Ryan.
Very cool. He was a great guy. My favorite of his was Barry Lyndon. I'm a big Stanley Kubrick fan.
Mm-hmm.
And the control that it takes to not move at all while giving a performance, like in the candlelit scene in that film, because it was the shallowest depth of field ever recorded on film. They were at a f/0.7, which was a lens that Kubrick had purchased from NASA that was made by Zeiss, but it allowed them to shoot with actual candlelight. You just can't breathe because your eyes will go out of focus.
Wow. Well, you are quite the technical genius in our family, because I know I'm not. I just watch movies and TV shows.
Well, I think whatever the weird trait that we share about retaining very specific information about things that we care a lot about in great detail is a wonderful gift.
And it's a nice gift for us to do this together, which I'm anxious to continue it. But let's get into Ryan's conversation right now, too. We did it at the Autry. There's an audience there, and he was giving me a hard time in a charming way.
Yeah, I asked before we filmed it if we should set up the boxing ring, and you'll find out if we do or don't in this episode.
All right, here he is, Ryan O'Neal.
William Holden and Ryan O'Neal are the Wild Rovers.
That's a terrific film. Blake Edwards not only directed it, but he wrote it. He had started as a writer. He used to write on radio, The Richard Diamond Show, and the Peter Gunn. He created that and wrote a lot of scripts, but a Western, he must have loved doing that.
I remember I used to ride because Blake got to take a helicopter, so we would go from location to location. Bill and I would drive in his beautiful 600 Mercedes, and long drive. So I had time to ask him all about his career. And I remember asking him, I said, how many movies have you been in? And he said, 66. I said, is that 66 leading ladies? You had 66 leading ladies, and we're driving here by ourselves? And he said, well, some of them were my horses. I always liked that.
Hey, Ross, you busy?
What's up?
Well, nothing right now, so I think I'm gonna go play some poker.
I think I'll just stay right here.
He was a great horseback rider, too.
He was brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
He was brilliant. He wasn't kidding around, but he had started, well, I guess after Golden Boy, he was in Arizona and a lot of Westerns.
Right. He and Glenn Ford at Columbia did several films together.
He and Glenn Ford?
Yes.
He didn't mention Glenn. He told me that his name was Billy Beadle, and he was from Pasadena, California, and he had a contract that was split between Paramount and Columbia. I think they each paid him $50. And he got a call to go over to Columbia to meet with Harry Cohen about this movie that they were going to make called Golden Boy, a boxing story. A Broadway hit, by the way, for years, John Garfield. But the publicist at Paramount said, Beadle, we can't use Beadle. We have to change her name. And he had a friend at the Los Angeles Times named Bill Holden, a sports writer. So he called Bill Holden and he said, we have an actor here and we'd like to use your name. And he said, well, can he act? And he said, well, we're going to find out. So that's how Bill Beadle became Bill Holden.
Yeah, he got the job, and I heard that Barbra Stanwyck took him under her wing and mentored him and helped him through that major film because he was a little nervous about a role of that size.
He sent her flowers for her birthday her entire life.
Mm-hmm. So she must have been helpful.
Every birthday, a dozen roses from Bill Holden.
Well, you are quite the film buff, too, I know.
I know who Henry Brandon is.
Yeah, well, and Henry Brandon, for those of you who don't know, Henry Brandon was Chief Scar and had been...
The Searchers.
In The Searchers, and had been a contract player at Hal Roach Studios. He played Indians several times.
Oh, many times. He was from Germany originally. His name was Brandenburg. And he was a friend of the family. He was a wonderful man, made me want to be an actor. If they were all like Henry, I wanted to be an actor.
What made it about him that gave him that stature, that presence, that made you...
Well, he was 6'4".
Well, that helps.
And very handsome and funny and charming. He just epitomized what I thought actors were like.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever talk to him about The Searchers?
Probably.
Yeah. Those are the...
Because he was in lots of movies. You could talk to him about all kinds of different parts. Yeah.
He had played in the Laurel and Hardy film Babes in Toyland. He was Silas, who wanted to take the Mother Hubbard's shoe away.
As a child, we've argued about this.
No, he's not as a child. He was young, but he was probably in his early 20s. Everybody knows Henry Brandon from that film, right? Two people.
Two's enough.
Something that I'd like to know about, when you grew up in L.A.
Yeah. Didn't everyone? My father was a screenwriter. He wrote a Western, actually. He wrote Return of the Bad Men with Randolph Scott and Robert Ryan. In fact, he got all the bad guys from the Old West and put them in one gang for Randolph to take on.
That was a big hit, too. I think Lawrence Tierney might have been one of those bad guys in that film.
I hope not.
He was a bad guy.
He played my father in Tough Guys Don't Dance. He had a fan photo that you have to give to people who would like it. His was the police dragging him towards a squad car. and he had blood all over the side of his face. I said, "This is the picture that you give to your..." He said, "What's wrong? What's wrong with it?" He was the brother of Scott Brady.
Yes.
And he did lots of Westerns.
Scott did, sure. Shotgun Slade. But Lawrence Tierney, he liked to cause tension wherever he went.
He was sober by the time I got him.
Mm-hmm.
So he was calmer. It was a little calmer, yeah.
There was a show that I watched growing up called The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. And
I got my Screen Actors Guild card doing that.
And Robbie and I watched that episode just yesterday.
Oh, I hope not.
We did. And, part of what made it appealing to me as a kid who is a teenager was the same thing that made it appeal to Robbie and me again last night, is that luscious, creamy Tuesday Weld.
I worked with in that show with Les Brown Jr. Les Brown Jr. was my partner in it, and so was Marlo Thomas. She is also in that episode. Perhaps you don't recognize her.
I didn't recognize
the nose, just like her dad.
That's what, I saw that and I'm going, this girl is really familiar.
She was a kind of aloof, too. I remember I was hoping for nice, warm, friendly people, and just Les Brown Jr.
Well,
who I went to high school with. I had known him for some time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in the Virginian. I did a Virginia with Lloyd Nolan and Chris Robinson and Two Faces West.
That's a good one.
And I worked with Charlie Bronson on a series called Empire. I learned a great deal about the business from Charles Bronson.
And Empire was a series that predated Dallas as a modern-day Western. Richard Egan, Terry Moore,
Bronson.
Charlie Bronson. What a great
Warren Anders, and Seymour. Yeah. I want to tell you a story about Bill Holden. So we're working on Wild Rovers. We're in Kanab, Utah.
Beautiful.
And the nominations came in, and I'm on it. I'm nominated for Best Actor. I couldn't believe it. But so was George C. Scott for Patton. So I didn't hold up much hope, and so then I kind of poo-pooed the whole thing. And Bill Holden said, he scolded me. He said, "No, you can't do that. This is your peers who voted you, and you are..." I said, "You know what? You have an Academy Award, don't you, for Stalag 17? He said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "And you have a home in Hong Kong, and you have a home in London, and you have in Africa, East Africa, you have the Africa Safari Club, and you have a place in Palm Springs. Where do you keep your Academy Award?" And there's a long pause, and he said, "It's in the Bay of Naples." I said, "The Bay of Naples? You took it and you threw it into the Bay of Naples?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I was sorry about it. The next day we were all diving for it, but we never found it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I said, "Well, if I win, I'm not throwing mine anywhere."
And that nomination was for Love Story.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Well, and speaking of a love story and Ally McGraw, you and Ally have been touring with love letters, I think.
Yes, we have.
I'll bet that's fun.
She still keeps her hotel room door locked. What could I do?
Steve McQueen, I think, broke it down one time.
More than once.
In that movie, The Wild Rovers, I know that always Blake Edwards had Henry Mancini score the films, and Hank was involved in another movie, and he had Jerry Goldsmith, who had scored Chinatown and Planet of the Apes, do the score for the film, which is a terrific soundtrack to that.
After we finished the production, the music comes in, so I was surprised when I heard it. Because Henry Mancini was my neighbor. And I said, what happened to you, Henry?
He was a busy boy.
Yeah.
Joe Don Baker and Tom Skerritt played Carl Malden's sons who were chasing you.
The sheriff has to stop, and you keep right on going and bring those cowboys back. You understand?
Dead or alive?
Alive, of course. That is, if they give you that choice.
A great cast.
And, I thought I was a pretty good rider, but they gave me a mule to ride in the movie. They're not as easy to ride, mules. In fact, they're almost impossible. So I was getting bucked off all the time. And luckily it was winter and it was snow, so you landed soft.
Your relationship with Peter Bogdanovich generated 3 really wonderful, timeless movies. What's Up, Doc was one of the great. It's a classic movie, just like Bringing Up Baby.
And this is Ryan O'Neal. You remember him from Love Story and Peyton Place and Games, and The Big Bounce was one of his bigger hits. Also a winner, Barbra Streisand over here. You remember her from Funny Face? Excuse me, Funny Girl.
Streisand.
Paper Moon. I watched that again last night.
They were singing it, and the song.
Yes.
Sang the song.
I wonder why they picked that.
Oh,
and
set up.
And Nickelodeon, that was the history of early filmmaking in Hollywood. Great.
Thank you.
Somebody had emailed me and reminded me that there was a series that I had watched, and I loved it, that Kirk Douglas produced, Tales of the Vikings. And we've heard that you were in that and shot in Scandinavia.
I was in about 30 of them.
Wow.
I was a Lichtdubel. I was the stand-in, Lichtdubel German. We shot it in Munich for Jerome Cortland.
Who was the lead?
Who was the leading man. And he was 6'6", so I had to wear these big blocks on my shoes so that I could stand in for him. But that's how I got my start, actually.
And did you have any roles in?
Yes, I did. Firebeard's dragon ship, we can give chase. I still have it stuck here.
I'd love to see those. Do you have any of those?
No, I don't know what happened to it, actually. It was a syndicated series for Bryna Productions. And they had all the costumes, and they had the long ships, and they had a village on a lake outside in Bavaria. So when they finished the movie, they thought, why not do a TV series? We have all these costumes and these boats. And so that's how that came.
A great production value. The movie.
Buddy Bear was in it, and a wonderful actor named Walter Barnes, who had played for the Philadelphia Eagles first before he was an actor.
And he went to Italy and made a lot of spaghetti westerns.
He sure did. He sure did. He stayed in Europe and got lots of work.
From out of the north, like an icy wind, swept Odin's for warrior breed. With broad axe and spear, they followed a star, adventure and glory their need. They conquered the seas in their dragon ships, fought bravely on many a land. For Valkyrie maids, right down for the man who dies with a sword in his hand. The Vikings, the Vikings, the Vikings, take well in the house.
Another show that you did was Peyton Place. It ran for 5 years. You did
just 500.
Yeah, 500 episodes.
I drew the line at 500.
That's enough. Well, that show was so popular, it was on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, as I recall.
Uh-huh. And before you were born, it was on 3 nights a week. They added a night. It was so successful, they added an additional half hour.
So when it first premiered, it was only on once a week?
No, it was always twice. And then after 2 years, they added an episode we were on 3 times.
Wow.
So the actors were always going back and forth, looking at their lines, wondering, where are you going? He said, I don't know, I'm going.
Yeah, one of the great actresses, she did terrific Westerns. Dorothy Malone was in that series as well. One of them.
Good woman, very decent woman, for sure. I had no idea she had such a wonderful career. I would have asked her more questions.
She was an Oscar winner.
She never talked about it. She was very, very...
well, a great actress.
Shy, she was shy. But also Mia Farrow.
Mm-hmm.
Can't forget about Mia. She was breathtaking, to tell you the truth. I'd never seen anyone like her.
Now, in the middle of the show, isn't that when she cut her hair so short?
Well, yeah, she did. She did. They claimed it was because she didn't get invited to Frank Sinatra's 50th wedding anniversary. 50th birthday. But,
wow. Glad you cleared that up.
A birthday. It was his birthday. But she said, I asked her, I said, because of his birthday, you cut all your hair off? Because she did it. They did the master with her hair down to her waist, and then the close-ups, there was no hair anymore. So they had to reshoot everything. And she claimed that she saw Barbara Parkins in the hairdresser. She was combing her hair, and then looking at it, and then combing it forward, and combing, and she's watching. And she said, how important is hair in life? And she opened a drawer, and in the drawer was a pair of pinking shears. That's all she needed. She cut it herself.
Well, Ryan, I want to thank you for joining us today. Yes, you are.
Well, is there lunch?
There's going to be lunch. There is lunch following this, but you're not done. One more question then.
Sure. I'll tell you anything.
All right. When you were growing up,
yeah.
Westerns.
Yeah.
I was so influenced by them, and so were so many of the people here today. Did you have favorite Western stars?
Jimmy Stewart and Winchester 73.
Wasn't that a great film?
Yeah.
Anthony Mann.
And of course, my dad's movie.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when it opened, he took all the kids in the neighborhood. We climbed in the car and we drove to see it. Westerns were wonderful. There was no, that's what you wanted to see were Westerns.
Mm-hmm.
And they had tripwires. There were things that get done to the animals in those days that you wouldn't want to do today.
That you're not allowed to do today.
And you're not allowed. They have somebody on the set always. But we had wonderful stuntmen in those days, too. Mm-hmm. And my favorite actors were like Whip Wilson and Lash LaRue. Yeah. And I saw Gene Autry. Now you go to rock concerts. Well, in those days, you went to see your favorite cowboy actor. He would be on stage. He'd sing a few songs. I remember his horse had guns for their bite, for their, and the bit. I thought that was amazing. He'd always reach for one of those if he needs it. And I was about 6, but there was Gene Autry. Yeah.
Pretty fancy. And now here you are at the Autry Museum.
And my son works for the Angels. He's a broadcaster for Fox, but his job is for the Los Angeles Angels, which was Gene's.
His real love. We love Westerns, and we love having you here, Ryan. I appreciate it. Thank you. That's it?
I'll just stay here.
Okay, now get off the stage. It was a surprise. Both Ryan and Farrah had cancer, and their health at the end sort of made it very difficult. And then when Farrah died, it really tore Ryan up. And I know he was not a good father, and he had a temper, but I enjoyed his company, and I think his conversation that he and I had was unusual. And I say that because at his funeral, they used excerpts from our conversation throughout his memorial service because he was charming. And didn't you think he was fun in this interview?
He was fun in this interview. He was fun in life. He was Definitely a charming guy.
And I'm glad I never had to box him.
Same.
Well, this is fun, and again, it's fun doing these with you, RJ, so I look forward to our next A Word on Westerns podcast.
Happy trails, folks.
Happy trails.
If you enjoy what we do here, please take a moment to follow our show and share these interviews with your friends. You can also find A Word on Westerns on Patreon, Facebook, and YouTube. Thank you, and see you next week on A Word on Westerns. Westerns is produced and hosted by Rob and RJ Word and produced by Caroline Parker Stark. Edited by Alex Lockett and Boar and Ebor Dro. Location audio is provided by Richard Reagan. Sound design by Alex Lockett. A Word on Westerns theme song was composed by Karel Pasoda with additional arrangements by Shipwreck Music and RJ Word.